This is still a warm-up for the Festival of the Holy Name. Mindful chanting. Or something like that. Mindful chanting? Yes? How about you? Maybe? Maybe. Mindfulness has become a popular word, or yeah. At least my understanding of where it comes from, the modern, attraction for this term, is from Buddhism. And it goes like this. According to the teachings of Buddha, okay. According to the teachings of Buddha, the root cause of suffering is desire. According to the teachings of, but not the teachings of the Vedas. If you reject the Vedas, you come up with something else. The root cause of suffering is desire. To become free from desire, how do you become free from desire? Huh?
You cannot be free of desire.
How you do what?
Because you cannot be free of desire.
You can't. You're right. But if you're a Buddhist, you try. To become free from desire, it's two main things. At least going in the direction. One, live a life of goodness. They don't speak of it like that. Live a life of compassion. For the qualities of compassion. Non-violence. No meat eating. Non-violence. Cleanliness, truthfulness, austerity. Life of goodness. So frame your life in the quality of goodness. And what do you put inside? Be in the moment. Meditation. In the moment, in the moment, in the moment. It's mindfulness. If you're Buddhist. If you're a Hare Krishna devotee in the 64 round day, it's the holy name. Mindful of the holy name. And nothing else. So, the goal of becoming free from desire, that's the path to get there. But here's what it looks like when you get there. When you become very accomplished at being in the moment, the objective is to go on the other side of the moment. It's a whole teaching. I want to give a class on mindfulness, but just the background. Kids, can you come forward, because there's people, big kids in the back, and they want a place to see. Fantastic. Okay. So let's try it again. What's on the other side of the moment? Nirvana. What's nirvana? Nothing. Nothingness, or shunyavada. Nothingness. Not very inviting, but that's the goal. So that you can become free from suffering. All of that was to become free from suffering. Free from this negation. When there's nothing, there's no suffering. There's no anything. There's no anything. It says nothing. And that's the goal. Now, the mindfulness of the Vedas is something else. It goes like this. The root cause of suffering is ignorance. And from ignorance comes ignorant desire, comes ignorant activity, comes suffering. So to relieve yourself of suffering, you need to replace ignorance with knowledge. But knowledge that doesn't have bhakti in it, it's incomplete. And therefore, follow the bhakti process was in this morning's class, in the Srimad Bhagavatam. By the process of bhakti, naturally knowledge and detachment awakens. We're going to hear a little bit going forward. This is a preamble for speaking something about what Patanjali has to say about yoga. You've heard the name Patanjali, your young man over here? Yes? Yeah. What do you know about Patanjali? What's he known for?
He's a sage. He is a sage.
He's a what sage?
A sage.
Sage, yeah, he's definitely a sage. Patanjali Muni is celebrated, he's especially known for his sutras. What's a sutra? Sutra is a little code, like Vedanta Sutra. It's not a whole sentence, it's just like a little code. You know, like what you put in your password for Wi-Fi. That's a code. So it's a few syllables that you can't understand unless you're a follower of Patanjali Yoga. So Patanjali gave sutras that teach the process of yoga, and we're going to be covering some of them. Because his goal is mindfulness. Now, the obstacle of mindfulness is ignorance, and ignorance has its influence on the mind through the agency of our dear friend false ego. We talked about false ego on Sunday. We talked about false ego this morning. We're going to talk about false ego a little bit this evening. It drives the whole machine. He's in charge. False ego is in charge. Just ask him. He'll tell you, I'm in charge. So mindfulness powered by emotion, because that's a desire, but we're not supposed to get rid of desire because you can't get rid of desire. You just have to purify desire. So that's powered by Bhakti Yoga. So this is a little, we spoke a little bit yesterday, the overcoming negative emotions topic. We'll be touching on emotions or feelings that the goal is not to become numb, as in no feelings. That's not the goal. But the goal is to purify and align those purified feelings. But while you're passing through the you're not there yet stage, then there's other emotions that are distracting. And they kind of like demand or scream or cry or make a bunch of noise saying, pay attention to me because I'm important. It's driven by false ego, but it comes through the mind and says, pay attention, instead of pay attention to in the mindfulness manner. Okay. So being, while this is the premise here, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of, to a degree, aware of how those surroundings are impacting your emotions, the mind, but not identifying with all of that stuff. And while that takes the back seat, you're in the front seat. And the front seat is the mindfulness of transcendence that's powered by bhakti. That's our topic. And the purpose of this, purpose of going through this topic is so hopefully it can enhance your experience during the Festival of the Holy Name, and maybe tomorrow morning's Japa, who knows. Let's see. So here we go, Mindfulness 101. I was asked to speak on this topic some time ago, and when I was asked, I was at the home of somebody, I don't even remember exactly where it was, somewhere, and I asked the person I was staying at their home, in your corporate life, is mindfulness a buzz also? He said, yes. I said, tell me. He said, everybody in the executive position in our company has to take a seminar on the mindful manager. So his wife is from England. So I asked his wife, in England is mindfulness? Oh, yes. Mindful eating, mindful walking. Mindfulness, it's a buzz. You know, what does it mean? It means different things to different people. It's just taking something that commercialized the term and make it what they wanted to make it. Just like that seminar, not seminar, the conference that Prabhupada was invited to speak at in 1961, cultivation of the human spirit, which could mean anything. So, mindfulness can mean anything, different depending upon the what's driving the machine of somebody. Then their false ego is going to determine what mindfulness means. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go to Patanjali and take a look at what Patanjali, in his Yoga Sutras, now mind you, these are little terse sayings. That's what a sutra is. And it's vast, so we're just going to take a little snippet and not, do a whole commentary on Yoga Sutras. We're going to start with the first one. And here's a little bit about Patanjali. Here's when he lived, a long time ago, 2nd century before Christ. And the first chapter is, on our topic, meditative absorption. Now here's something funny. Other people besides Patanjali spoke about mind or meditative absorption. There's a very celebrated person. Anyone here, Bharatanatyam ladies or girls, Bhakti Muni? You've heard his name before? No? No one? Oh, come on. Bhakti Hari. Bhakti Hari. No? Come on. Bharatanatyam dancing. He's the so along with his teaching of dance, it's the form or expression of dance is it's a subset of a bigger thing. What's the bigger thing? The bigger thing is teaching of transcendental emotion, or emotion at least. And so dance was meant to convey emotion, and from the dancer with the music to the audience, and the idea was so they can experience and feel different emotions. And he had some teachings. In fact, Rupa Goswami drew much of what he wrote in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu from Bhakti Muni. Only he had a fewer number of rasas, and Rupa Goswami expanded the number of rasas. But it's similar to, one could say, drawn from, the structure of Bhakti Muni's teachings. So one of the things that he wrote was Subhashita, words of wisdom. And one of the words of wisdom has to do with the mind. The mind is like a monkey. Then he elaborates, a drunken monkey. And then he elaborates, a drunken monkey stung by a scorpion. And then he elaborates, a drunken monkey stung by a scorpion possessed by a ghost. Words of wisdom. Subhashita. And some modern artists have managed to capture the drunken monkey, stung by a scorpion, possessed by a ghost. So that's what we're trying to tame, this fellow, the monkey. Now, there are ways to do that, that's called sadhana or abhyasa, and there are persons who have, just without having to practice, they're already there. They're by being fixed spontaneously in bhakti, the mind becomes controlled. And even when there's provocation, I'm thinking of this lecture series that Prabhupada gave in Los Angeles, the whole chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita, day after day after day, classes on chapter 6. And I remember this very clearly because I listened to it multiple times. One of the phrases in chapter 6, what's chapter 6? Dhyan Yoga? Dhyan Yoga? Meditation. So he explains the word dhira. D-H-I-R-A, dhira. Dhira means one who remains undisturbed, even when there's cause for disturbance. That is dhira. So dhira is a natural state of the soul, and it's a natural state that arises from bhakti. And in the case of Haridas Thakur, as you know, he was tempted by a prostitute. He was a prostitute. The best of the prostitutes in the place where he was staying was sent to seduce him. And it didn't work the other way around. She became Bhaktin, prostitute. Bhaktin Dasi. Instead of, he fell down, being seduced by the prostitute, because he is fixed in bhakti. So why are we telling this? This is the spontaneous stage that practice can bring one to, if you do the practice nice. Exactly what the verse this morning was. Wasn't it nice? One who seriously cultivates. So we have an opportunity. We have everyday opportunity. And this coming weekend, we have this very special focused opportunity just to become very absorbed in the holy name. So there's pure mindfulness that's spontaneous, and then there's practice. So when we're not there yet, that's most of us probably, we're not there yet at the spontaneous bhakti stage. So what are some of the difficulties? Why is it difficult to control the drunken monkey? You want to volunteer a suggestion? You look like you were getting ready to say something. No? Okay. Why is it difficult? You mean to say it's not difficult? So what's the churning rod? What stirs the pot? Desire. Attachment. Desire and attachment. Attachment to a particular desire or a particular object.
Tendency.
Previous tendencies. Sure. Vasana. Sense objects. Association. You mean the bad kind, right? We're definitely associating with one. Look around the room. We're packed up here. Even up on the staircase. Look at that.
Seriousness, desire,
complacency. So behind all these things, we discussed it on Sunday evening, we discussed it this morning, and we'll discuss it again. Our dear friend, false ego. because that's where it starts, and that's what drives the desire and the attachment and the, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's the most subtle thing, and it's driving the grosser things, and it's driving our senses, and it's driving our attraction for sense objects, and it's one driving the machine, the material.
Side effect of attachment, because fear also kind of.
But where's fear? Fear is in the mind, and fear has everything to do with identifying with something that you're not, and you may lose that something that you're not. Fear of death, but we're not the body. So what makes us think that we're the body is false ego, and therefore emotions, because that was yesterday's topic, overcoming negative emotions. So this is dealing with our dear friend, false ego. So this isn't perfect. This is just a very simple model, following Patanjali Yoga Sutras, 4 basic steps to mindfulness. And you can have another list, that's okay. Just in our simple everyday language, step out of autopilot. What is autopilot? Past tendencies. I see something, I feel something, and I do something or say something because of past tendencies. We don't have to think about it, just 1, 2, 3. Dominoes, boom, boom, boom. So to check it, mindfulness means be present. This is mindfulness, right? Be in the moment. It's another phrase for mindfulness. Be in the moment. Be in the moment. Be in the present. Mindfulness. Vaisheshika Prabhu. Many of you know who Vaisheshika Prabhu is. If you don't, maybe one day you'll have the good fortune he'll come and visit and inspire you in book distribution. He came? Okay. So you know him. There may be some other people in the room that didn't meet him yet. Don't spoil the story here. But here's a nice Vaisheshika Prabhu story. One time, he was in New York City helping the devotees in New York become inspired in book distribution. So he went out on the street wearing his dhoti, nice tilak, and he described this, that one young man came bouncing up to him and said, "Oh, you're a monk. Are you enjoying being in the moment?" Because that's, Buddhism. It happens to me a lot. Not too much anymore. Let me just share. I find more people that are smiling when they see me in the dhoti and, looking at them and smiling at them. They smile. It happens a lot lately. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's my gray hair or something. I have to grow my hair a little bit because to enter China I have to have a little bit of hair. Anyway. It's in a funny mood tonight. I was going to tell you a story, I forgot. Oh, yeah. So people would ask sometimes, we're standing in line to board a plane or something like that. And they look at me and say, "Do you mind if I ask, are you a monk?" And I'm tempted to say, "It's not Halloween." But I haven't said it yet. And my answer is, yes, I'm a monk. And they say, "Are you a Buddhist monk?" I say, "No, I'm a Krishna monk." You go, "Oh, what's that?" And so I get to talk about Krishna just by, being in the moment, right? So be present, to step out of autopilot. That's the every day, the tendency, materially conditioned tendencies to just do things mindlessly instead of be mindful. So be in the moment. And then the same topic as yesterday. We don't tuck emotions, even the negative ones, under the rug. It's encouraged to be aware of what's going on around you, what's going on in your body. I don't know if you have one of these watches, but it tells me every now and then, about 5 times a day, breathe. Oh my gosh. I forgot to because breath, pranayama, cools down the nervous system. So it's good. Breath is good. We're going to see it. It's in Patanjali's teachings too. So it's these are, you notice the star above is be present. That's self-honesty and self-awareness. That has everything to do with being the present. So we spoke about introspection. That's self-awareness and self-honesty. Be true. And if sometimes it's helpful to be self-honest. I mentioned it yesterday. Here we go again, and this morning. It's sometimes helpful to have persons who know you very well, and they can indicate to you things that you may not be aware of. You're trying to be honest and trying to be aware, but the blind spots topic. So it's helpful to be in the mindfulness state, to have persons, in addition to your own capacities of introspection. And look at this, here's breath. Release tensions or heightened emotions by pranayama. It's just simple. It's, if people that don't know what pranayama is, just like take 10 deep breaths. It's just standard. You get, all wound up, fiery or something. It does something to the nervous system. And so then the mind becomes more controlled, and you can start to think of your options better when you're in that condition. So they hear in 4, we're going to hear this right in Patanjali Yoga. Exercise intelligence to direct the mind towards your object of high regard and shelter. We discussed it yesterday. It's one of the 4 keys, and this is just another way of saying the same thing. You have a purpose in life. You have true to yourself. You have a concept, and align yourself with that philosophical concept. Of course, you want to review, do I have the right philosophical concept, by studying Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, etc. And the temporary nature. There's an overlap of some of what we discussed yesterday, of overcoming negative emotions. And ultimately to transcendence, and transcendence in the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Deep breath. I found that reference I was looking for. Here it is. This is Viktor Frankl. He has different ages of photographs of him. What man actually needs is not attentionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for some goal worthy of him. What he needs is not the discharge of tension at any cost, but the call of a potential meaning awaiting to be fulfilled by him. And it's true. You align yourself to that, and the mind, it's a higher power than the mind. The mind can be redirected by the intelligence, and the intelligence makes sure you have the right intelligence. That the Dhammi Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenama Puriyanti Te kind, where Krishna is giving you the intelligence how to come to him. And if you don't have that intelligence, then go back to the basics of bhakti. Even if you have that intelligence, go back to the basics of bhakti. Thinking, I'm not very advanced soul, I need the connection with the Supreme Soul. But here's a nice image of gongs, because sound can be very helpful in focusing. Now, we have our sound in the form of mantra, or when we have kirtan, it's musical instruments and the sound of the mantra. But supposing you're not a Hare Krishna devotee and you're a Buddhist. One of the places where I was traveling was in Oswego, New York, which is way up north, New York State. And we had a program at the YMCA, and it was a big hall at the YMCA that they used for yoga classes. They rented out for yoga classes. So that's where our program was. And across the wall, body, mind, spirit. That's another buzz. Body, mind, spirit. What's that? Anything? Body, mind, spirit. And then I noticed towards the far end of the room, there was one of those things that you see on the left. So I don't know if they use it in yoga, or if they use it for Tai Chi, or if they use it for some kind of Buddhist meditation or something, but it's very powerful. My point is, the reason for putting this image is sound is powerful. I'm going to tell another little story. Some of you have heard the story before. Many years ago, I was in Boston around December. That's not the best time to be in Boston because, winter in Boston can be severe, but I was in Boston around Christmas time. And Harvard Divinity School was conducting a little seminar for grad students. 3 grad students had done a project on the views today in spirituality. It was like a documentary, and it was done with a storyline. There were 2 guys, and they were kind of going here and going there and experimenting, and then they would find something, and then part of the video was, part of their documentary was interviewing somebody who's a specialist in this field or that field or the other field of spirituality. So spirituality in modern day, that was the documentary. So the 2 young people that were like the characters, the main characters, there was a scene where it's soft music, person is rowing a boat in a lake, summertime, and he comes to the shore of the lake, and he pulls his canoe up by the shore of the lake, gets out of the canoe, and walks up a little bit on a rise, and sees a Buddhist monk. He's sitting there being mindful. And as he approaches the Buddhist monk takes one of these instruments and hits it. So at the end, there were 3 speakers. I was invited because I was the token Hindu. They had a Christian, they had a Muslim, they couldn't find a Hindu, so they asked me to come. So there's this professor, that professor, and me. And I know the professors. I'm not going to say their names, but they're well-written, well-known kind of celebrity people. Professors at Harvard University Divinity School. This one, that one, the next one. So, and each of us, I was the 3rd one. We were asked to say, out of the whole video, what was some of the most powerful moments or messages that you received? Kind of like a debriefing and sharing. So I said that scene because sound is very powerful. It caught my. It's still, I can envision that scene. It's powerful. So then I started describing the power of mantra. And as I started describing the power of mantra, a little anecdotal thing of, I was a new devotee in Boston Common and chanting and what that experience was like in Boston. I held up my beads, and the Christian fellow, no, the first one was a Muslim fellow, and he held up his beads. And he handed his beads to me. I pressed them to my head. The Jesuit priest said, "Oh, I left mine home." And I was showing mine. So, it's universal, is the point. And you don't have to have a gong. You can have a prayer or a name or a sound that connects you to the purpose of your life. That's what... So that's what we're doing through the Festival of the Holy Name. Okay, now we're going to Patanjali Yoga and Mindfulness. So he makes the first of his sutras in this chapter, which is the first chapter, is what is yoga. And first we'll take a Bhagavad Gita definition, and then we'll take his Patanjali Yoga Sutra definition. Here's Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 50. Perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure, fruitive work. Such equanimity is called yoga. Strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. And here's Patanjali. Yogash chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta, we'll hear, the next slide will say, chitta, it means the mind, but it's more explicitly, literally, it's the subtle body. And there's three features to the subtle body, correct? Mind, intelligence, and our dear friend, false ego. That's chitta. And vritti means swirling. Chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is stopping the swirling of our subtle body, or specifically, here in this case, is the mind. So, here's a nice graphic. I think you'll like it. This fellow seated on the stairs up here, he came up with this one. Where do you find these images? So most people, when they hear yoga, they think it's asanas. Or Prabhupada would use the phrase hatha yoga. Just body postures and sometimes breathing and sometimes pranayam. Excuse me, some breathing is pranayam. So they don't do the first two. You know what the first two are? Yama and niyama, which means the do's and the don'ts. Ethical life. Don't talk about that, please. They don't go there. I mean, maybe some do, but 99% don't. It's just asanas and some pranayama and go home. So yoga is much more than the asanas. So here's the phrase again. Remember, we're going through Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and why we're doing this, to understand what mindfulness is, and so we can have nice japa. That's why we're doing this. So the word chitta can refer to all of the three features of the subtle body, and in the chitta vritti, it's the sea is the mind, and the chitta, the vritti, is the swirling of the waves of the sea. So like the sea swirls in waves, this is a really big wave. Some they're smaller, but the idea of yoga is to calm it down. So here's the third and the fourth of the Yoga Sutras. Just added this. This is... No?
That was the definition of yoga?
Yeah, it was number two. Number two. Number two. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. You want the I can send you the PDF. It's the whole, all the first 28 or something like that. He'll send you one. Okay. With all the diacritics and everything. Okay, so there's yogas chitta vritti nirodha. The rodha is like calming it down. And so that's what yoga is by definition. And then there's the next two, tada drashtu swarupe vasthanam. And that is, it's, in simple language, calm the mind to the point of goodness so you can see deep within the water of the sea what's at the bottom of the sea. So the bottom of the sea, but below the mind is the soul. So if you practice yoga properly, you can calm the mind in this mindfulness methodology, and then when the mind is calm, you can see the soul. The second one says, supposing you don't, vritti, that's the churning, sarupyam, you see everything else, you see the churning, and then the next several is going to be what the churnings are like. So there's different kinds of churnings, but instead the ever-changing states of mind is what we identify with, which where our consciousness goes, and we identify with the mind. Compliments of our dear friend, false ego. So supposing you calm the mind, but you haven't gotten rid of false ego, wait a while. It's going to start churning again. Once upon a time, I was a college kid. A few lifetimes ago. And it's by Krishna's arrangement. I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. It is Krishna's arrangement. There were a group of us that had spiritual inclination, ended up making friendships with one another, and we, in my senior year of college, we rented a farmhouse far away from the city. And in the farm, it was a big house, and so one was practicing Zazen, another was practicing Rosicrucian, another was practicing Hare Krishna, and I was like a new guy, just kind of like. So in the house, we made a little room that was a zendo. What's a zendo? A zendo is where you do Zen. And just down from, was in Buffalo, that away, east was Rochester, and there was a celebrated Zen author and teacher named Philip Kapleau, who wrote a book, 3 Pillars of Zen. So he used to do Zen and then go visit the Zendo in Rochester. So we can was checking it out. And what I just said was my experience was, did it work? It was very powerful. Here's the system. I hope you don't mind. I'm digressing, but it's relevant. So it's a nice story too. The practice of Zen that he was teaching was, there's probably different brands and varieties, but his version was, you sit in a early in the morning, get up in the morning and take your bath, brush your teeth, and not go chant Hare Krishna, but go sit in the zendo and do zazen for an hour and a half, sitting in a yoga posture, looking at a blank wall for an hour and a half. And the practice was, in the mind comes a thought. Don't engage with the mind. It's like a cloud moving in the sky. And picture. Here comes a cloud moving in the sky. And you see it, you don't interact with it, because normally you interact with the thoughts and desires and stuff that's in the mind. But you don't do that. You just let it go. And there it goes. And it's gone. Here comes another one. And you don't interact with it. And so as you get accomplished at it, it's like this, the Buddhist idea of the root cause of suffering is desire. You don't interact with those desires, because those thoughts are just the fruits of past interactions, and here comes desire, and normally people just get involved in that desire, or that thought, or that emotion, or that something. Just let it go, and it becomes a clear sky. Sometimes it doesn't become a clear sky, but that's commonly the direction things move in. And so it was powerful. I felt something, like peaceful. And then, when I walked out of the Zendo, it started getting cluttered up again. Because it's unnatural. That was the conclusion I reached. It didn't take too long. It's not life. It's artificial. Not life. Where did he go? He's out playing ball with his brother or something. You can't become free from desire. You can repress it, lock it down, put it in a box, but it's going to come out. So what to do? Make it pure. How do you do that? That's what yoga practice is. So Buddhism is not yoga practice. It's discipline. It is trying to lock down. Anyway, so this is the detachment to that which is moving around the swirling the vrittis within the mind. Here's another nice verse. Are you familiar with this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam? In this age of Kali, men are always disturbed, even when there's no cause for disturbance. It's the opposite of Dhira. Dhira is even when there's cause for disturbance, remain undisturbed. Kali Yuga is even when there's no disturbance, you get disturbed. You create something or see something, or perceive something, or you're not happy unless you're disturbed. Too much zazen is not good. You need some disturbance. So now we're going to move on into Patanjali Yoga Sutras to text 5. Here's what it's a simple summary of what the fourth one says. We'll identify with the 5 kinds of vrittis if you don't have the mind calmed. So what are those varieties of vrittis or swirlings within the mind? Now, the footnotes to this, judgmentalism is actually, it's pramana. We don't know pramana as judgmentalism. It's the means of knowing something. It's correct knowledge. Yours is shabda pramana. Shabda pramana. Paurusheya shabda pramana. Nice adjective. Aparusheya means beyond a fallible human. And shabda comes from anybody, but Paurusheya shabda comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you can, but with intelligence that comes from the right source, right knowledge, then you can correct the mind. But supposing you don't have the proper Aparusheya shabda praman, then you're going to guide your activities with mistakes. And that's the next one. Viparyaya. Similar to vipralipsa. Similar, it's making mistakes. Daydreaming. None of us daydream, I'm sure. Vikalpa. Sankalpa, vikalpa. Accepting, rejecting. So the wandering mind. Daydreaming, imagining things. Sleep, nidra. These are states of consciousness or states of the mind. And the one that you had mentioned, past impressions, and the past impressions move you. Smriti, experiences of some past impressions. You may not even remember what those impressions are, but they're there. Count on it, they're there. It's stored in the mind. And these are 5 states of swirlings within the mind. And look at this, Yoga Sutras 5 through 11. We just covered a bunch of sutras. By the way, Jamuna Jivan had prepared this, so if you don't like this image on the right side, you can blame him. Bomb-proof, fireproof, waterproof, windproof, spirit soul, 100% transcendental. And ingredients, Satchit Ananda. There's a barcode. It's cyclable. There's the true self. So this purpose of yoga, remember, is that the swirlings of the mind, like the sea, becomes calm, and then you can see what's beneath the mind. I'm going to tell another little story. It's one of those nights. When I was a young boy, I lived in a small town, one of the Finger Lakes. There are 5 long, narrow lakes. One of them was the town where I lived, and the water in that lake is so pure. The city of Syracuse drew the water. Didn't even treat the water. It was very pure water. It was a really nice place, and so I spent a lot of time in the water, swimming and scuba diving and snorkeling and skiing, water skiing, and water sports, swimming. If I had stayed there, I probably would have become a fish in my next life. But connected to Patanjali Yoga Sutras, when there's windy and stormy, and the sediment at the bottom of the lake, it's not like a muddy kind of lake. It's a very pure lake. But, you couldn't see very deep into the water. It wasn't a good snorkeling day. But when it was calm, and had been calm for some time, you could see objects just, with a snorkel, skimming along the surface of the water. You could see stuff, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet down. Very clear. That's yoga. Where the mind is calm, and then you can see what's beneath the soul. That's the purpose of mindfulness from Patanjali's point of view. Controlling or subduing or bringing about by yoga practice these swirlings of the mind. The pure soul appears to undergo the experiences of the body and the mind. We know what those are, the changes of the body and the happiness, distress, etc. But these are mere transformations of the body and mind. That's the chitta vritti. Ahankara, our dear friend, an illusory relating to one's self-awareness, self-identity, and self-conceit. It ties the soul to the mind and its waves. This is the culprit, the guy that's behind the show, that makes it difficult to control the mind or to practice, to have your 64-round day where you're staying focused. Now, I was looking for this audio clip. I couldn't find it, but here's the audio clip, a description of it. Prabhupada was being interviewed by the New York Post in New York. It was an audio recording. Swamiji, you came to this country. You must be carrying a message. What is that message you'd like to give to everybody? Prabhupada, know yourself. Pause. Know yourself? Prabhupada, know yourself. Wait a minute, I thought I knew myself. You're not following Patanjali yoga. You're not, the mind is swirling in these different ways, and you don't know who you really are. So Prabhupada didn't give a whole Patanjali yoga class to this reporter. He just said succinctly, know yourself, which is what Patanjali is saying, which is what yoga is saying, which is what Bhagavad Gita is saying, which is what our practice is. Here's Krishna speaking something similar to Uddhava. They're not consecutive verses. The false ego of the living entity places him in bondage, which awards him exactly opposite what he really desires. What really desires is transcendental. That's what the desire that we don't anesthetize, but it's covered. So we get the opposite of what we really desire. Then, utilize the sharpened sword of knowledge acquired by logical reflection and from the instructions of sages and Vedic literatures to completely cut off the false ego, which is the breeding ground of all doubts. There it is, straight from Krishna's mouth to Uddhava. Okay, so now we're going to do a interactive exercise. I hope you like interactive exercises. So false ego is a problem. We're going to take 15 minutes. Woo! Maybe less, maybe 10 minutes, because I've been talking too much. 10 minutes. Take a look at your watch. 10 minutes in groups of 4. And you see what's on the screen. I don't have to read it. You can read. And you, in your groups of 4, you discuss these 3 points. You're into it? Yeah? No, you're not into it. You sit with your mom and she'll help you. Okay, when you're ready, go to it. And I'll ring the bell when it's time to end.
What are the various I said I was a student, it's specific when it comes to the assignments and things in class. My friends designate me to be because I know what I'm doing in class. So if I get it wrong, then they get it wrong as well. They went the bigger time, why I get it wrong. It's for a particular so what makes it difficult to let go of the they won't let me do. Nobody because it's part of a designation that I know I'm mistaken and I'm but if I were to make up myself, that doesn't make everyone happy. But if we give research and if we give research now and try to consider I being and have make me
Wind it up. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama. Okay. Ideal would be to debrief. We're not going to do it because I've been talking too much. But that's just like everyone could share what they, in their little discussion group, shared. Moving on, this is the Patanjali Yoga Sutra formula of how to stop, in big letters, how to stop the swirling of the mind. And very similar to Bhagavad Gita, abhyasa means practice, and vairagya means detachment. Constant practice and detachment, abhyasa. What's Bhagavad Gita's message? Abhyasa yoga yuktena cetasa nanyagamino. So, practice and detachment. So, the couplet in Vedic texts is commonly knowledge and detachment. But this is practice to get to that knowledge and then detachment. This is Yoga Sutras 13:14. So what does practice look like? Doesn't look like that. That's distraction. What distraction looks like. Practice looks like the effort to concentrate the mind. This is breaking apart the sutra. It's a little bit longer. But the part that's really nice is the three factors. Nairantarya is something you do every day. Uninterrupted cultivation. Nairantarya. And the third one is over an extended period of time. Like your lifetime. Something you do for your lifetime. Or at least for an extended period of time. And then satkara, with reverence or devotion. So we get on the bhakti boat or the bhakti train or the bhakti vehicle with some purpose that we wish to achieve through our bhakti practice, because bhakti, that's the satkara. It's translated sometimes, it's just devotion. So we do something every day for a prolonged period of time with the confidence it's going to take us to where we want to go. And that's the practice. And then the other half, remember that image, the balance of the yoga, it's the other is detachment. And what does detachment look like? Or what isn't it? And it's not, I don't care. That's a wrong idea of detachment. A mode of goodness sense of detachment is there's desiring something in a mode of goodness fashion such that the tamas and rajas desires subside, or you turn the dimmer switch brighter and the darkness is dispelled. So that's the detachment. The darkness of desire is dispelled. Lack of craving due to controlled consciousness. This is within this sutra. Vitrishnasya. Trishna. Trishna means thirst. Vitrishnasya. So where the thirst for or craving for objects of the senses becomes subdued by practice and detachment. And that is by elevation of something, a greater happiness, Bhagavad Gita, a greater happiness than lesser happiness fades. What children do for hours and hours playing and playing and playing is as they mature, they don't have the same desire to do the playing because they have something that they find a greater happiness in. And so they do that something else, and the toys fade in their significance. Uh-oh. That's a craving image. But it's not impersonalism or taking a dagger and stabbing to death, caring about people or something. That couple over there sitting on the park bench. Detachment is being a witness to the mind. So here's a nice message from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 13. The living entity within the body is ascertained to possess characteristics different from the three states of consciousness. What are the three states of consciousness? Awake, sleep, where you're dreaming, and deep sleep, you're not even dreaming. Three states of consciousness. So, seeing oneself as distinct from that, because it's not exactly consciousness of the self, it's consciousness of the states of mind. And just being a witness. So that's the detachment. That's like this Zen thing. Here comes a desire or thought. And the detachment. So we as devotees, we don't have to sit in a zendo and do that. We can live our lives in that way. And what gives it charge is we have another purpose. We have the knowledge of the Vedas. So we have both. We have Bhakti and knowledge that comes from Bhakti, and thus detachment. Jnana Vairagya, from the strength of Bhakti. Neglecting mind. This is Bhagavatam, Canto 5. There's one easy weapon with which the mind can be conquered, and that's neglect. No, this is not a new idea. Bhaktisiddhanta offered this idea in a nice way. We should become very expert in disobeying the mind's orders. The mind, material mind. Gradually the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul, or the supreme super soul, or the spiritual master who is the representative of super soul or scripture. It's not that one should obey the orders of the mind. Different from neglecting the mind, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, you've heard this one before, I'm sure, control the mind when you should beat it 100 times just after awakening. Beat the mind with your shoe. I know a brahmachari that tried to do that. He took a shoe and started hitting himself in the head. That's not what it means. And again 100 times in the broomstick before going to sleep. This way one can control the mind. So, controlling the mind. So it practice and detachment. Practice in the positive sense, and detachment. There's a nice image, practice and detachment. So let's go to Scripture and see what Scripture says. We're circling back to Haridas Thakur. Higher than practice and detachment is the spontaneous stage, where there's, by practice of yoga, the mind may, by proper practice, as we heard in this morning's class, by very serious practice, the mind can become controlled, and then some perception or sense of our spiritual identity will hear more about this during the Festival of the Holy Name from our acharyas and their explanation of this. One can actually perceive the self, one can perceive the form of the self, one can perceive the Supreme Self, but it's not going to happen if you can't do this mindfulness program. But it's meant for us. That's where the train is going, everybody. All aboard. So to come to that spontaneous stage, there's practice and detachment. So here's Patanjali, because he moves into the Bhakti realm naturally. Here's Sutra number 23. Ishvara pranidhanat va. So a nice devotional translation. Devotional service to the Supreme, Ishvara, or the controller, or the Supreme Being, is the easy method of attaining samadhi. Easy method, right? And that's Bhakti Yoga. In the teachings to Uddhava, there's this word Turiya, the fourth dimension. It's not science fiction, it's Bhagavatam. And Uddhava's using this term, Turiya, the fourth dimension, in this way. The soul is trapped in the bondage of material intelligence, which awards him constant engagement in the illusory modes of nature. But, Krishna says, I am the fourth stage of consciousness. Which to three? Wakefulness, sleep, deep sleep. Awake, sleep and dreaming, deep sleep. Four states of consciousness. He is the fourth dimension, Krishna. Being situated in me, the soul should give up the bondage of material consciousness. At that time, the living entity will automatically renounce the material sense objects and the material mind. You ready? I hope so. It may take a while, but that's where we're going. So now continuing in the Yoga Sutras, there are 5 stages of that controlling of the mind. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur covers these in his topics. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur covers these in his topics. It's standard understanding drawn from, we would say, from Patanjali or from the Vedas. When the mind is unsteady and flickering, we know what that's like. Wishing for some sense object and then for another. Chitta, disturbed. Then, a little above that, lazy. Modha, confused, drowsy, lazy mind, bewildered. Partial focus, maybe we're a little more familiar with this one. Vikshipta, occasional moments of calm, and then comes the storm again. Generally distracted. Focused, ekagrita, fixed on some external or internal object. We discussed this at the very beginning, remember? Remember that? Steady as a flame in the windless room, situated in goodness, and then samadhi, or niruddha, absorbed. The mind is completely pacified and satisfied. The self is fixed in its true nature. So that's where we want to go. Your daily, our daily, my daily chanting with the sankalpa, the intention to come to the state where we're attentive and absorbed. We're not there yet. Attentive and absorbed. Normally we're used to the flickering. It's always like not the candle in the windless place, it's a candle where there's some wind blowing. But if we can place Krishna in our thought, then we can come to this other type of meditation or mindfulness. Okay, now that this is supposed to end with a little discussion. So I think there's two options. We'll do a little discussion and then see if there's some general questions. But I think the integration of all of this is helpful. Key takeaways. Where are you in those 5 stages? I'll show the 5 stages again. And what's one thing you can go to the next stage? Oops, here's the 5 stages. So where are you? What's a good takeaway? Where are you in this chart? And what's something you can do to go to the next little baby step in the right direction? As we heard from yesterday, small steps in the right direction. So you had your little discussion groups. We'll take a shorter period of time, 3-4 minutes, and then some general questions, answers.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's magic, huh? Okay, any general discussion, comments, questions, complaints? We have a portable microphone.
That image of the lake.
Yeah?
So there was a sentence that where you could see the soul.
Yeah.
So it seems like the sphere is who's the sphere? Like the soul is the sphere.
That's a nice question. That's a very nice question. What's your answer to that question?
We couldn't hear the question.
The question was, in the image with the lake or the sea that's calm, and you can see the soul within, who's the seer?
The mind.
That mind has become calm so that you can see the soul. Who's the seer of the soul when the mind is calm? Try again.
Soul is seeing reflected in the mind.
Huh?
The soul is seeing reflected in the mind.
That's a nice answer. It's a nice meditation.
My understanding in studying this section of the Yoga Sutras is that my understanding is studying the section of the Yoga Sutras is that the identification with the mind is what is where we find ourselves most of the time.
Yes.
And then as that calming happens, then the identification descends to the real self, and then we start to see who we really are. So it's an identification thing. Yeah, we most connect to who we really are.
That's clear. That's clear, and therefore the metaphor.
The metaphor is a material metaphor to try to understand the swirlings. That when you calm, you can actually see something.
Nice catch.
If I could just comment on that.
Yeah.
The analogy is not in the sutras themselves. The analogy is by the commentators on the sutras. The analogy of the calming of the waves.
Yeah, but what you said is the explanation, is our explanation. That is, we can perceive who we really are. It's not, no, so now who's the perceiver of who we really are? It's me understanding who I really am, as opposed to the swirlings. So what is, seeing the self? It's seeing who you are. Huh? Wait a minute, that two at the same time doesn't work. You speak first.
The soul is the seer and also being seen. That's how it can.
Well, yes and no. We're perceiving ourself, yes. So we're the seer and the seen. But it's identification with who we really are in contrast to the normal consciousness of identifying with what we're not. The coverings and the swirlings of the coverings, etc. So seeing the self, perceiving the self, is understanding who we really are. It's not like we're standing apart from ourselves and we see, oh, there he is, me. Not like that. But that was your question. That was a good question. That was a really good question. Anything else? Yes.
Guru Maharaj, I have a couple of questions regarding so in the contemporary yoga world, there is so much misinformation and cultural appropriation. So I'm just trying to discern the Vaishnav understanding in a couple areas. One is, I was under the assumption that our interest in studying and sharing the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is a time, place, circumstance adjustment in our outreach. However, you mentioned that Bhaktivinoda Thakur took these 5 stages of mind control potentially from Patanjali. So I'm wondering, did the Vaishnavacharyas study Patanjali's Yoga
Why
Sutras?
not?
I just haven't heard of it.
Well, why not? You want to say something about that?
Vyasadeva commented on the Yoga Sutras himself.
Well, how's that possible? Because Patanjali, when did Patanjali live? And when did Vyasadeva live? How did he comment on Patanjali Yoga Sutras? But your question was, did they read? Yes. My understanding is, I mean, I didn't watch them, but my understanding is they became conversant in, because it's a standard text. And that is, he was accepted as an authority on yoga by our acharyas. Now, the brand is another thing. So back to the root of your question. In our outreach, should we, using our outreach, emphasize or bring to the attention of people what the Yoga Sutras say? I believe so. I mean, for example, the first time I heard any of the sutras was from Bhakti Began Maharaj. And, what's he doing with the Yoga Sutras? Because this isn't something that's standard, but it is a standard text on yoga, and it's helpful. Those 3 things. Here's another, just in response to the first of your questions. When I'm going to China, one of the persons who is for 5 years has been involved in the yoga circuit in China has come to the conclusion that they really don't know what yoga is, and they hear a brand. When they hear Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't go in because it doesn't match their brand, and it's just like they buy the Bhagavad Gita but they don't apply it. So there's not much transformation in the yoga circuit. And therefore, this is Vraja. She wants me to speak about real yoga. So excuse me, but what do you mean by real? What do you mean when you want me to communicate what real yoga is? What's real yoga? It's the Ashtanga yoga system, which involves this application of these Patanjali Yoga Sutras. It's not like he wants me to give a class on Patanjali Yoga Sutras. But she wants the distinction between what they're learning and what real yoga is. So we can say, well, it's Bhagavad Gita, but it doesn't go in. Some persons take Bhagavad Gita study from those yoga group classes. And how much of it goes in, her experience is not a whole lot goes in. It's more information and not a whole lot of assimilation. Anyway. So your question is it appropriate for us? It comes back to your question this morning. Should we go there? Well, if we go there, it's a tool to help people, but don't become attached to the tool. Become attached to the essence. And you as a teacher, don't get lost in the blah blah. You stay with the essence and be mindful of what the purpose of your involving yourself in yoga classes with yoga people and the body, mind, spirit people, and why are we doing this anyways? Because it's something they have an interest in. If we just do this, the giving classes on stuff that they're going to check out. So it's a tool to help them get to where we would like them to help them get to. So the answer to your question is yes. Being mindful of what our mission is. Did you hear Hari Parsha Prabhu's class in appreciation of Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Yes? Some of you, if you haven't, it was a really good class. It was at the Chicago Temple on the occasion of the 50th Kishore Kishori worship celebration. And he came on the day, it was the disappearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So one of the things he said is, before he did his writing, he became thoroughly immersed in the tradition, the writings of our acharyas, etc. And at the same time, because of his position as a leader, he was very tuned into, I forget the word that he used, but the British influence, the European influence, the Christian influence. Modernity is another term that's often used. There's one of his biographers called One in Modernity. So he had very accomplished understanding of both, and he was able to utilize language and approaches that modern people would understand without compromising at all the tradition, the teachings of the tradition. And he had many obstacles. It was a nice class. And it was many obstacles even from traditional people, et cetera, many obstacles. So we have many obstacles too, and we're not Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but we can apply the principle. Just don't get wet. That's Prabhupada's example. When you go fishing, don't get wet. Next.
Guru Maharaj, a comment arose in my mind while you were speaking and wanted to share that, and I also have another question if there's time. The comment is, I personally feel very uncomfortable with using yoga as a bait and hook, because I actually find that the process of yoga is extremely beneficial as a support in our practice of bhakti, because to keep the body and mind healthy is very much supportive of our practice of bhakti. So personally, in my sharing of yoga, I personally see the value of it, not just as something to be renounced at a certain stage, however, something that continues to support our essential practice.
But then comes the yabat. Yabat, many people don't see it that way. It's an end unto itself. It's to feel good, feel healthy. So, your second?
It's actually a chronology question, because you mentioned Patanjali was in the 2nd century BC. And we hear of these rishis that live in Siddhaloka that practice yoga. So yoga seems to be an eternal practice.
Oh, yeah.
However, the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali came later.
They're dated. Gopal, honey? Pat, here comes Bhakti Mike.
Maharaj, following these questions in the same kind of theme, it seems like Srila Prabhupada didn't emphasize the meditative practice in chanting so much, like Zen Buddhism does, and these other processes
yes,
do.
That's correct.
And he
emphasize more the purification of the mind so that the mind is attracted to Krishna, like you were
Yes.
mentioning Gangibo Udanti. So we also have the 11th offense, which is inattentive chanting causes
All the other ones.
the other one. So why not? Why didn't Srila Prabhupada emphasize this as much? What would be some reasons?
One of the classes I'm going to be giving quotes Srila Prabhupada about, it's going to be the morning class before a 64-round day, and there's a quote from Prabhupada when somebody is saying, Prabhupada, what about the mind? He said, what are you talking about the mind? Just hear. And if you're hearing, the mind is captured, so don't worry about the mind, just hear. So he gave emphasis in a different way. You know, maybe it was the person at that particular time, place, circumstance, and you know, somebody that had a tendency to be mental, and what about my mind? And you know, just hear, because that was the remedy. Bhakti Siddhanta said something quite similar. So emphasis more on hearing than on mindfulness, because that creates mindfulness. That's one answer. There may be other answers. You know, what was his reason and purpose?
So I had a follow-up or related question. Probably I think I'm getting some of the answers, but like the abhyasa, when I saw that,
Abhyasa.
I'm really very new. I don't know a lot
Oh,
of
you know
stuff.
what abhyasa means.
But when you say concentrate, what do you concentrate on? I am told to chant, so he's also asking. So do I concentrate on the sound?
Yes.
Sound.
And that's the beginning. So we'll hear some more as we go forward, but that's the beginning. And to the degree that you can be successful at concentrating on the sound, some other things start to happen. What starts to happen, please? What happens is the coverings become cleansed, or the swirling, the vrittis become subsided. They reduce. And then from the concentration of the sound, nama is in sequence, rupa, the form of Krishna in his name, or the form of the name, the form of the name. It's not like over there is the form of Krishna and over here is the name, and they kind of like join up. The name has form. And then the qualities of Krishna and then the activities of Krishna appear within the mind that has been brought to a position of stillness, the mindfulness or stillness, by concentration on hearing. You know, by speaking like this, it's a nice answer to your question. The emphasis is on hearing. When we make the sound.
Thank you so much, because I was always, abhyasa, I've heard a lot. Concentrate on what? It
The
was so
sound.
confusing.
The sound. But know that I'll preempt something I'm going to say Sunday morning. You'll hear it again Sunday morning. The mind does not have the capacity to understand. The name and the person are non-different, because on this plane, the name of something and the something are different. The object, water, and the word water are different. The sound and the object are different. Absolute, they're non-different. So Bhakti Siddhanta teaches the mind does not have the capacity to understand that. You can accept it conceptually, but you can't experience it simply through the mind, because it's a binary processor. However, it can be experienced and understood and completely, part of your consciousness based upon hearing the sound.
I will try. Thank you so much for that answer. Yeah, I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
you'll hear more.
I have a follow-up question on that quickly, if you guys don't mind. Isn't this seer, like, what is consciousness? Is that so?
I like that question. I like that question. Here's a partial answer. A dictionary definition is one thing. But a principle-based definition is awareness. Prabhupada, here's something that helps me at least. Maybe it'll help you. The soul is both conscious and consciousness. So what does that mean? Because it's similar to your question. What's consciousness? What does that mean? The example given in the Vedas is just like a lamp is luminous, and it illuminates objects in the room, like pots and plates. Upanishad. As a flame or a lamp, light is luminous and it lights up things in the room. So the soul is conscious and consciousness. It means it extends out beyond the senses into the objects of the senses, and we can recognize or be aware of objects that's both within and out. Conscious and consciousness. So that's what it's an awareness of who you are and who things other than you, what they are. That's awareness or consciousness.
But what happened? Thank you, but can I ask another follow-up? Like, what happens when I sleep? I'm not aware of my surroundings.
What happens?
When I sleep.
When you sleep. The surroundings are still there, but you're just not conscious of the surroundings that are there. So it's a state of consciousness that's one of the three. But the soul doesn't stop being conscious, it's just withdrawn or subsided.
Got it.
Okay. You have something?
What I was thinking, Krishna, that is,
You going to speak into the microphone or not?
yeah.
Okay, good.
And so, the yoga process, we always talk about the yogi seeing the Paramatma in the heart. And so the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, is it about viewing the self? Is it like, usually we talk about the yogi seeing the Paramatma.
Okay, I heard that part.
So the Yoga Sutras, is it talking about the same yoga?
Yes. The word that's used, we showed it, Ishvara. Who's that? It's not you.
Yeah, that's true. So I was thinking the object seen is Paramatma rather than... so the Jivatma...
rather than what?
The Jivatma is able to see the Paramatma.
Why not? When the mind is peaceful,
Yeah.
is that possible? Yes.
Yeah, yes. So who is the seer?
The jiva.
The jiva soul is seeing the
Paramatma.
super soul.
Atma sees Paramatma.
Paramatma. So I thought that's
Is that nice?
that's what I wanted to.
Okay. All the way in the back.
Today morning's class, Yamuna Jivana Prabhu brought up two references from
Yes, I asked him about it afterwards too.
Uddhava Gita. And in
No, it
that
was from Bhagavatam.
Uddhava Gita, I think.
Yes, from the Bhagavatam, Uddhava Gita. Okay, I thought you said Bhagavad Gita. Okay.
Yeah. So the second one, of course, both of them are really similar. But in the second one, it was said that the Lord is saying, I personally established the Vedic sound vibration in the form of Omkara within all living entities. It is thus perceived subtly, just like a single strand of fiber on a lotus stalk. And I think there was other reference where it said that it is very difficult to, it is unfathomable, and it's like an ocean, and it is not that easy to perceive this sound. And I somehow happened to be reading this Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, and so I came across, I was wondering who is Patanjali, and I came across somewhere that Patanjali is an incarnation, or he himself is Sheshanag, and Sheshanag went into very deep meditation at specific places in certain hills, and I forgot the exact location, because he got frustrated with all his brother snakes like Takshaka and all those venomous activities, and so
Where
he
are
kind
you
of left.
reading this from?
And he was in deep meditation upon the Supreme Lord.
Before you go further, what did you evaluate the reference source?
Yeah, that I tried, but I'm not good in internet. And
Yeah, well,
I wanted to ask.
I don't want you to repeat more, because I'm concerned about the source.
Yeah, so
Don't go on with the story, because I want to know what the source is, and you don't know the source.
I couldn't, and
Okay, so don't go on with it until you find the source, because otherwise it's
I mean,
sound
we can put
vibration.
that-
Excuse me, but it's sound vibration that can just be more of chitta vritti. Now it might be something else. It might be something that makes the mind very calm. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, great.
now I was wondering, like Patanjali is specifying about devotional service to the Supreme is the easy method. He says that, right, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra.
I'm with you.
So, when we talk about practice, serious practice, even though the method given to us really is very clear-cut, paying attention to the sound vibration, but because of all these, so many other distractions to the mind, sometimes, most of the time, many of us won't move forward, and there are instructions in Yoga Sutra which might help. And also it is clear that Patanjali is also specifying about devotional service to the Supreme is the easy method. And so I was just thinking that, considering all that, it is okay to apply those principles in addition to the practice.
Well, it's not in addition to. It's embedded within. It's not in addition to. It's embedded within. I mean, one can go through each one of these sutras and find numerous scriptural references from our scriptures, from the Vaishnava scriptures, that says the same thing in different language. Just these are sutras in a sutra form. The sutras, the foundation and support for sutras of Patanjali sutras is the Vedas. Just like Vedanta Sutra, the foundation is the Vedas. So the foundation is the Vedas, not the sutras. So is it helpful? Yes. And then comes, the complication or the extra exercise of becoming clear, what does the sutra mean? Then you need commentary. Because without the commentary, you're not going to understand the sutra. Or you may come up with a wrong understanding of the sutra. So we need the proper commentary from the proper source, etc. I think we should end. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada. Keep.